Okay, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second series of webinar on the BEM's Professional Competency Examination. Thank you for finding time and visiting today's webinar. My name is Shazwani from Megadata Academy. We will be the moderator for today's session. For those who's having your lunch right now, I hope you enjoy your lunch and during this presentation. And today we are presenting PCE's for civil PEs presented by Engineer Cheong Hon Wui. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Please mute your microphone during the presentation. And if you have any question during the presentation, please type them into the chat box and speaker will read them during the Q&A session. We will have a short break during a presentation. We will send you all the relevant email after the event, including a link to download today's presentation. Okay, today's guest speaker is Engineer Cheong Hon Wui. He has almost 15 years experience in project management, contract administration, infrastructure, railway, marine structure, bridge building information, and building design and construction. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Engineer Cheong Hon Wui to lead the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks for the SEN's moderator. Okay, I think the first thing I need to share screen first. Shazwani, are you be able to see my share screens on my presentation slides?
Yes, yes.
All right, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, thanks for the introductory sections from the SEM, the session's moderator, the Ms. Shazwani. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Cheong Hon Wui. I'm your today's webinar presenter. Currently, I'm holding the positions of Engineering Director at Pakat Steel Berunding, one of the oldest and largest consulting engineer firms in Malaysia. In years 2019, I've taken my Professional Competency Exam, PCE, and hoping today's session, this webinar, will be a sharing sections to my fellow civil PEs based on my personal individual experience. Okay, without further ado, let's look at today's outline of the webinar. First of all, it will be a quick introduction sections that on the PCE and why the board is implementing this PCE. Secondly, we will go through the format and structures of PCE. There will be the two major portions in these examinations, that namely for the Commons Paper Syllabus Part A and the Civils Paper Syllabus Part B. We will go through the syllabus so that to let the fellows Civils PE to have a better understanding on the areas, the subject, to be prepared prior to the exam sitting. Okay, apart from there, I will try to share some my personal experience and some tips on these PCE preparations and what I have learned throughout the process. And last but not least will be the closing for the sessions. Okay, first of all, if you refer to the amendments of the Registrations of Engineer 8, REA 1967, and Registrations of Engineer Regulations, RER 1990, it has passed by the Parliament on the 12th of February 2015. Followed by that, both REA, RER has come into operation fully and enforced on 31st July 2015. There are numerous amendments has been made, and one of it is the implementations of the PCE. Okay, so let's go. We have a look on the Registrations of Engineer 8 1967. When we refer to the sections 4(1), the board will conduct the PCE for the purpose to issue the practicing certificate of the professional engineers. Okay, here we can understand that the board is in kind of licensing the PE in setting the regulations on the qualification for such a licensing. Result for this is the two-tier registrations PE. I think this is quite common and what we call is made known to all the PEs now. So which is the tier 1 for PE and tier 2 for the PE PC. For those registered the PE before the 31st July 2015 will be converted to PE PC in writings in such a way they wish to be converted to PE PC. Otherwise, they will maintain as a tier 1 PE. For those who register the PE after the 31st July, okay, That will be the, if they still want to pursue for the PEPC status, it is compulsory for them to sit and pass PCE. Okay, again, in the REA sections 10D, it stipulated a person is entitled and to be registered as a PEPC with the conditions he is a PE. He has to pass the PCE and he needs to comply the requirements by the board. Okay, apart from that, we refer to the REA section 7A, 7B. It does spell out that the engineers consultancy practice, ECP, who provide the professional engineering services, he must be a PEPC. And hence, for those PE who wish to submit plan, who want to become a principal submitting person, PSP, a submitting person, SP, he need to be a PEPC and not just the tier 1 PE. So here we see the needs. Okay, so this one we just go through quickly on the purpose, the aim for the PCE. Okay, so on the this one PCE is on the liberalizations of the engineering services. So in Malaysia here, we are permitting the foreign engineers that they can practice in the country. Okay, in the other hand is the improvement, enhancements to the competency of the local engineer so that they can be competitive when the engineering services were liberalized. And then we have to safeguard the public interest and the safety with more competent engineers. Okay, to the aims is to test the PE within the limit defined in the REA in the professional engineer services. Okay, this is to test the technical knowledge, experience of the PE. In particular today, we are talking about more to the civils and structural engineering. Okay, there will be the regulations and rules for the engineering practice in Malaysia, statutory laws, the Code of Practice CP regulations, ethical behavior, professional conduct, standard of the professionalism and technical core competency. Okay, it's time. Let's look at some of the statistics. If you can see from the screens here, since the rollout of the PCE at the year 2016, this exam PCE has took place for 4 times, from the year 2016 to 2019. We can notice that there is an increased uptrends for the tier 1 PE sitting for the exam from year to year. Let's focus on the civils PE. For the civils PE who sit for the exam, we can see on the 2016 there are 47%, so 2017 79%, 2018 102%, 2019 132%. Okay, but here we don't have the statistics for 2020. Why? Because at year 2020, we understand that it's due to the COVID-19 pandemic situation in the country. Hence, in year 2020, the PCE has been postponed for a few times. And eventually, there is no PCEs being carried out at that year. Nonetheless, at this year, 2021, from the board information there, the PCE is tentatively scheduled on 13 and 14 November. And we hope it can be carried out successfully. Okay, here let's look at this is another statistics for the civils PE who pass the PCE based on year. Okay, averagely from here we can see that the average passing rate will be around 12% from the result for the past 4 years. So namely from the years 2016 to 2019. Okay, that was a very quick introductions on the PCE. Okay, so now let us to focus on the format structures of PCE. Okay, to sit for the exam, we shall fully understand the format and the structure of PCE. There will be the 2 parts in this examination, that namely will be the part A for commons paper. So this will be sit by all disciplines. And part B will be the technicals on specific for the civils and structures PE. There will be the 2 paper, each part in the paper 1, there will be the objective questions, and paper 2 will be the subjective question. So similarly, the same arrangement for the part B. Candidate need to pass both the paper 1 and paper 2 in one sitting. However, the PE can sit for the part A and part B together or separately. Okay, please be reminded, this is an open book exam, but the handwritten and loose note is not allowed to bring it into the exam hall. Okay, so this is the further detail, the breakdown on more details on the PCE Part A and Part B. The question arrangement is exactly the same for common paper Part A and the technical paper Part B. Okay, for paper 1, there will be the 1.5 hours to answer the 40 objective questions. And the passing mark will be 50%. Okay, here we can understand that for paper 1, my arrangement and my recommendations on the remarks for the 90 minutes arrangement were in such a way. Okay, if you allow 10 minutes to recheck your answer, 10 minutes to revisit the difficult answer, basically you have the 70 minutes for the 40 question reading and answer. Okay, this will equal to 1.75 minutes that you have to answer one objective question. Okay, then next, let's look at the paper 2. Similarly, on the paper 2, you will allow for 1.5 hours to answer the 3 out of 5 long essay questions. Okay, on the candidate, you were given this 15 minutes to read the questions. Okay, on that, you see the remarks. On the 90 minutes arrangement, the recommendations, I will recommend 15 minutes for at the end of the paper times that you spend to recheck your answer. And then you will just left 75 minutes to answer the 3 long questions. So i.e. you will have just merely about 25 minutes for each questions. And of course, this is the arrangement for the paper 1, paper 2 is from my personal experience and suggestions to the audience. Okay, let's see. This one is a very brief, the flow charts for the PCE. The passing for the paper 1 and B, for the part A and B actually is independent for the part A and B. Okay, but however, in order for you to succeed to obtain and pass the PCE for PEPC, you have to pass both paper A and paper B, okay, together. Okay, so this one just a quick the intro for the format and the structures for PCE to all. Okay, so now we will spend more times on this one, the common paper and the technical paper for the part A and part B on the syllabus. Let's go through. Okay, after we understand the format and the structure for PCE, let's look at the part A on common paper syllabus. This common paper will test the candidate's knowledge of the laws governing the professions, the responsibility of the profession towards the general public, and the status of the professionalism and ethical behavior. There will be the 7 areas that the candidate need to beware and to prepare. First, you can see that this one, the first subject will be the law regulations governing the engineering profession in Malaysia. Number 2, engineer responsibility to society and to the public. Number 3, professionalism. Number 4, knowledge laws having relevance. Number 5, knowledge of contract laws in Malaysia with respect to the construction industry. 6, an in-depth knowledge of the functions of the consulting engineer during the various stages of the project implementations in accordance to BM models form of agreement. And last will be the management of the ECP. Okay, the first subject that will be the regulations governing the engineering professions in Malaysia. Candidates shall fully read and understand fully on the REA, the registrations of Engineer 8 1967. As shown in the bullet points over here, right? Candidate will have to understand the function of the board, the engineering consultancy practice, ECP, qualification for registrations, applications of registrations, notification of the change of address, the disciplinary committee, investigating committee, cancellations, removal, reinstatements of the registration, and last, the appeal board. Okay, apart from the REA, the candidate shall have a good draft and a good understanding on the RER as well, Registrations of Engineer Regulations 1990. Okay, this include the procedure and legal aspect, the letter of release. And in BM, there is some circular about this, the letter of release before a second engineer to take over the first engineer scope of work. Okay, in sections 31, bracket C, Romans 1 and 2, it has to obtain the consent that the registered engineer or ECP has been formally notified by the client that the registered engineer or ECP has been terminated in accordance to the provision of any contract to the another registered engineer or ECP with the client. Okay, and then you shall make reference, as I mentioned, you can refer to the BM, the board circular number 1/2006, okay, on the guideline of an engineer taking over the works of the another. Okay, so here we can see in the RER is also covered for the professional conduct, the method of dispute resolutions between the professionals and his clients. So for example, like the litigations, arbitrations, mediations, conciliations, adjudication, and etc. And this one is not to forget that there is one, the important part is on the CIPA, on the Construction Industry Payment and Adjudication 8, okay, the 8746. Okay, not limited to REA and RER, PE should understand on the UBBL and Earthworks by law also. Okay, so here is the list of the BM circulars. Okay, I would suggest and recommend the candidates before you sit and you well prepare and reading through and understand for the BM circulars. You can find all these, the circular is published in the official website of BEM. Okay, next, equivalent importance will be the the guidelines. The guidelines issued from the board. Okay, again, for all these guidelines is made available in the BM official webpage. I do recommend the PEs to download and fully understand and have a look on it. Okay, so now it comes to the second topic to be covered under the part A. On this second topic is the engineer's responsibility to society and to public. Malaysia, we are practicing the common law, and under this system, we have the independent arms of government, which is the executive, the legislative, and judiciary. Okay, under this, which is head by the head of state. The three branches of the state that in theory of independent of each other and act as a check and balance against any branch that from accumulating too much of power. So I believe this is quite common and very what you call the candidate should prepare for it and understand about it. The next, the candidate should have a clear mind on the civil law and basic concept of torts. In Malaysia, the common law justice system, the legal action may not only be brought between the parties, so on the matter of contract laws, on the criminal law, the statutory law, and civil law. Okay, meanwhile, for tort law is the body of law that addresses and provides the remedies for the civil wrongdoings not arising out of the contractor's obligation, and tort can further be classified as a negligence tort. What is so-called the negligence tort? Negligence torts, for example, refers to accidents, the product liability, duty of care, and intentional torts, okay, which include, for example, like the nuisance, trespass, defamations, and false imprisonments. Okay, so in the REA, Registrations of Engineer 8, Sections 8, bracket 1, has stated only the PCE or ECP shall be entitled to submit the plans, engineering surveys, drawing, schemes, proposals, reports, design or studies to any person or authority in Malaysia. And hence, the professional owns a duty of care. The standard or the level of the expertise and due diligence, especially under the tort laws for the requirements of the UBBL to the local authority. So I believe all the PE should familiar with this, the CCC, CFO, OC, and OP. The cross-reference to the other laws in Malaysia has to be made during the submissions of the plans. Okay, this include and not limited to the local government aid, the town and country planning aid, the street and drainage and building aid 1974, UBBL, Earthworks by law, environmental quality aid, factory and machinery aid, especially the BOEC chapter, the span guideline, the spans regulations, CIDB 8, and etc. There are so many more else. The sittings PE shall have the knowledge on the above law and 8 and practice on it. Okay, subsequently, to submit the engineering plans and becomes a PSP, the principal submitting person and the submitting person, a person shall be the PEPC, and he needs to well understand the submissions process requirements under the rules of law. In the right-hand side, the slide shows the flow chart of the authority, the local authority submissions for the project, from the planning approval until the issuance of CCC. On the left-hand side is a slide that is shown on the G forms. From there, you can see it's ranged from the G1 to G21 to be fully observed, to compose and endorse. I wish to highlight that the candidates as well, that the BM is now going to implement the CCC process and procedure to the BM 3.0. As you can see from here, right? So when you log into the BMs, the login page, you can see that actually there will be the functions over here, right? Okay, is to assign a person the PSP or SP to endorse on the CCC online that assigned to you. Okay, next, we see this is the form F. Okay, this is form F and this is the sample for the form G1. So subsequently, apart from form G1, there are so many after the G1 to G21. This is for your information and sample for your knowledge. Again, on the engineer responsibility to the society and public, he shall aware that his design liability works is within the following factors. So he has to observe the risk, the factor of safety, the code of practice, the limitation 8, the difference liability based on the reasonable skill and care. And this is a very heavy words here, is fit for purpose. A reasonable understanding of the professional responsibility pertaining to the duty of care, due diligence to the client under the contractual and tortious relationship. Okay, that's about the topic on the second topic. So let's see, the next will be the professionalism. For the 4 key concepts of professionalism, we can see we have the public interest, client interest, code of conduct, and expert knowledge. Okay, first of all, on the public interest, the work conducted by the PE shall deem injurious to the public interest that take precedence. For the second, on the client interest, a PE shall always hold in trust the interest of his client and help as his own interest. Just treat the client interest as your own interest. So on the number 3 will be the code of conduct. A PE shall uphold his status of the profession by maintaining the standards conduct, such as he has to be ethical, moral, honesty, modesty, impartial judgment, not supplanting the work of another engineer, and avoidance of the conflict of interest and expertise in his works. The last will be the 4th concept will be the expert knowledge, that a PE shall have his professional knowledge to his work. This is to distinguish that he himself from the general public. Do remember, you are the professionals engineers over here. You are just not like the others ordinary people, because you possess and you having the expert knowledge. The same code of conduct is also covered in the RER. So I will recommend the candidate really to have a thorough studies and the understanding on the RER as well. Okay, the next will be as discussed in the previous slides. There are the others, the cross references that having relevance in our daily works as a PE on the engineering works. A PE shall be aware and abide to it. These include and not limited, like I mentioned before, on the local council aid, town planning aid, the street and drainage aid, fire services aid, environment quality aid, electricity supply aid, gas supply, the CIDB aid, CIPA, OSHA's aid, the FM, and the BOEC, and Water Supply Industry Aid 2006. Okay, the next topic cover under the Part A. Okay, here is the contract laws in Malaysia. Okay, handling the contract is unavoidable to a PE, no matter his own contract to his client or to handle the project tender and contract. The basic concept of the contract law is covered under the subject in all the bullet points over here. Number one is the introductions to the contract law. As you can see from here, this is the screenshot for the contract law, 1950. You need to understand the offer and acceptance. What are those considerations in forming a contract? The intentions to create the legal relations, the legal capacity, formalities, conditions, and contract is considered void, unvoidable. The condition of the contract that unenforceable, and the privity of contracts. Here, I will need your attention on the recent topic that make very relevant to the contract, that is the COVID-19 situation in the country. Okay, essentially due to this pandemic, COVID-19, it has created somehow of the frustrations to the contract. I believe the PE who attend the dear audience today, you should have some experience on it. This particular refers to the force majeure clause in your contract. If it defines the COVID-19 in your contract, if it is defined as an event or otherwise, and we see the COVID-19 is never take precedence before in this country. So many contracts that we are implementing is in the absence of this COVID-19 in the force majeure clause. The COVID-19 essentially to stay with us for a time, and you shall have a look on this particular item to consider or not to add an event under your force majeure clause, as it definitely will bring impact to your contract and project. And I also understand that for the upcoming some of the tenders from the government, they have started to consider the COVID-19 as a pandemic and endemic situations to their contract. Okay, and hence they have implemented to cover the pandemic and endemic clauses, the event, and park under the force majeure clause. This is just for the information to all. Okay, apart from that, a PE shall familiar with the different type of the construction contract. So then he be able to understand, he need to understand the differences in between among other. That is only when he be able to advise his client on the appropriate contract to be adopted for his project. The various types of the contract that practiced in current in Malaysia include the direct contract, nominated subcontract, direct subcontract, turnkey contract, and the design and build contract. The forms of the contract that we use will have these PAMs 1998, PAM 2006, JKR 203, JKR Design and Build, and FIDIC. The FIDIC books, so you will see the FIDIC, we call it the more generally, we call it the FIDIC white book for the consultancies contract, FIDIC red book for the constructions contract. Okay, here this will give a summary on the different type of the contracts. Okay, so this is just a simple summary amongst all the different type of the contract. For example, I won't go into too narrative on this and too elaborate, but I just want to go through one. Say for example, like we're talking about the contract for turnkey and design and build. Okay, particular on the turnkey and design and build, we can see that actually on the consultants, it will be the one advisory consultant on board for the design and builds project. Contractors, normally we will have one D and B contractors. And on the appointments of the consultants, it will be appointed by the contractor, as contractors will bear normally in the sense, in the case for the design and build for the design warranty. Okay, on the this one on the item C, the client's expertise required, as you can see across the Romans 1 and 2. On the client side, relatively is only required the low skill, because most of the items, it will be covered under the design and build contractors. For the project cost, normally this will be the highest cost for the design and build. The type of the project, this will be very relevant for those large scale for the very large project like the railway projects that implemented in the country. And it requires the special proprietary technologies. On the popularity wise, for the large and complex projects, we will tend to form it as a design and build contracts. Okay, and for the last items, the criteria on the project schedule, for the design and build, normally is the fastest and suitable for the project on the fast track basis. Okay, hope this will be a little bit on the summary page for the different type of the contract that makes what we call the knowledge to all. Okay, next, we will discuss about the knowledge of the function of the consulting engineer during the various stages in the project. So if you can see from the, when we implement the implementations of the project, for the consulting engineer, it always starts from the feasibility and preliminary stage. Then after we will enter to the design stage 1 and 2. Upon finish of the design, we will go to the tender stage, then is prepare all the tenders and calling for the contractors. And after this one, the tender stage, we will go for the construction stage and the post-construction stage. For the detailed scope of work in each, from the Romans 1 to 6, the candidate can refer to the BEM Skill Office 1998, which outline the basic professional services for the various stages shown above. It's worth to mention here that currently there is a BEM working group is in the midst of reviewing the revised BEM Skill Office 1998, and some amendments are proposed. So hopefully all the PEs, the today's PE, have some knowledge about it and hear about it before. Okay, I will recommend the candidate to put some attention to it and to observe the latest developments on this BEM, the revised skill of it, on the upcoming change. Okay, on this one is the topic on the number 7, management of the ECP. For this area of concern will be more advantage to those PE who is now a management level in their consulting engineers firms. Okay, the PE shall have the good governance, the practice in accordance with the company aids and regulations, awareness of the implications of the penalties involved for violations of the intellectual property, methods of charging professional fees and reimbursement item to the client for the services rendered in accordance to the revised BEM skill of fee, the basic knowledge of the local labor law. So this, if you are already the what I call the certain level on the management level or the SCP, ECP, this will make very relevant to you, and these are the items that you can try to capture for it. Okay, here, so we will bring to the summary for the weightage for the PCE question for the part A. On the part A questions, as you can see, if we can summarize on that for the paper 1 and 2, the weightage for the engineering aid and professional practice, it will take the weightage by 35%. For the common law, local aid and local authority, it will take 30% for it. Constructions and contract laws will take 25% by weightage. The ECP business and management, it will take 10%. In summary, in total up from the 4 categories here, we have the 100% to cover the overall on the questions paper summary to all. Okay, next. If you can see from here, this is some of the sample question. For this sample question, you can grade from the BM, then in the candidates can have a look. Of normal, all these questions is more relevant to the our daily works, and it's nothing different, and it's so common that the candidate will be able to answer. Okay, again, this will be the sample for the suggested questions. Normally, the question will focus more on the common situations and problem faced by a PE in his project. During the candidate answer the long essay question, he shall make reference to the relevant law and regulations. You need to have the what we call to get those the references where you're quoting this from REA, RER, and even from the contract laws clearly. Candidate can answer in the point form, and you shall try to avoid to beat about the bush. Okay, you just go straight to the points, write out all the answers on your answer sheet. In actual facts, you won't have too much time to spend on the long naggy answer anyway. So please try to keep it short and simple. Okay, with that, I think we have go through on this commons paper. Okay, here I will see that let's cover on the second part for the syllabus paper on the part B syllabus. Okay, here we go for the part B. And this part B here for the civil technical paper syllabus, as we know, the civil engineering is a very wide spectrum, okay, of the engineering knowledge. It was just not enough for me to introduce all, and there are so much knowledge that we need to master in order to perform our daily engineering works. However, here I will have to raise these 9 major areas of concern that a civil engineer shall look into and prepare if you wish to sit for the PCE. As you can see from the sequential of the engineering works, you will start from the survey works. Then after the survey works, we will see what are the requirements for the survey works. And next, you will see the requirements for the standard practice and preparation, the detailed drawing for constructions. You need to prepare a good drawings in order for the constructions implementations. Okay, and then on this design part, you can see first, we will start from the subsurface investigations work, or more commonly we call it the SI works. And then we will have the earthworks, the structural design, the foundations design, the civil infrastructure design, and last will be the regulatory practice and submissions procedure for civil engineer. Okay, first of all, when we have looking at the survey works and requirements for the engineering surveys, almost all the project will kick off with the survey works. It is so important for a PE to know the procedure to provide the term of reference for the survey works. All the survey outcome and the result shall fit to his design and his intentions to carry out the designs later on. We will see that most of the time there will be if they're not clear enough on the TOR, more often we will get the survey works to go for the survey works again and again and again in order for us to have the sufficient information for the design works. Okay, for the survey works, we also have to at the same time to identify the surveys corridor that required. So within your project, the ROW, the right of way, the type of the information to be picked up by the surveyor, and without a good and well-defined survey scope of work and results, it will be very hard for the engineers to carry out his design, especially for the civil infrastructures projects. Okay, on next, the second, on this one is the requirements for the drawing preparations. I think that I do not need to elaborate too much on this, as I will see this, the preparations of the drawings for the constructions, for the submission and all this is a compulsory skill for all PE, that the PE will have his ability to produce drawings. The engineer shall be able to cover and convert his design from the sketchboard to the drawings productions for the site constructions consumptions. A good drawing that having the correct skill, the legible to be read in the A1 size and even to the A3 size paper. As we see normally at the site, we're just taking the A3 size paper for constructions. So the drawings, it has to be made legible even in the A3 size. You will have these details, the technical notes in your drawings, the sufficient cross sections for reference. This is quite important when you prepare for your detailed drawing for the constructions. Most of the time that I aware the engineer were just simply having a plan and one cross sections and not to make too much of the cross section, especially to some the difficult details. And this will let the contractor on site to guess, because they have the limited cross section to understand your drawing, your design. And this is the some hiccups and hazards is bring to the construction time. Another item is, of course, in preparation for the detailed drawings, you need to come up with the drawing status. So it's a design, it's a submission authority submission status, it's a construction status, and all this, and with a proper title for the better understandings. Okay, on the technical paper, on the another part, you will see is a subsurface investigations work. For this one, the third items, after reading the first one is subsequent from the previous survey works. We have gotten the survey plan now. Okay, the next is a rollout of the SI works. For the SI work, the engineer shall know the conditions, the ground's condition. It does not matter whether you are a geotechnical engineer, a structuralist engineer, or infrastructures engineer. The engineers must know the ground. Our engineering works is either to build below ground or above ground, and hence it is imperative to know the ground's condition. For the subsurface investigation work, it starts with the planning of the SI works. So from the planning of the SI work, each include for those says that we have the filling works on the embankment, the platform in the soft ground, the cut and fill in hillside development, road works on the hilly terrains, the earthwork foundation cut and fill on the good flat grounds, the foundations design, be it the shallow or the deep foundations on the soft ground, the considerations for the foundations design on the hillside, the foundation design in the limestones area, and the planning. After we have rolled out our planning on the plan for the points for the SI, the next we will have to under this, the second item is the planning of the laboratory testing and interpretations of the result. Okay, so of all this, it has been earlier highlighted on the points of the SI, the type of the SI that we wish to carry out. The next, we will further to elaborate further on the requirements for the laboratory test that is required. Excuse me. Okay, so subsequent from the previous, we know that we need to have this one, the plannings on the SI for our works. Okay, here I just want to take one example for the planning of the subsurvey investigation field works. As you can see from these plans, actually this is a route project, a route development project for the infra projects. As you can see, we will try to roll out the planning for the SI for the design in the later stage. Okay, for the boreholes, we will plan for the boreholes locations, and then we will determine the venture test, the core penetration test, then is planned on the high embankment field side. And then on the bridge structures here, we have the planning on the SI boreholes. And in order to gain and obtain the sufficient ground information in the design, for the high embankment geotechnical design, earthwork design, as well as the rollout of the subsurface investigation works for the bridge structures. Okay, so this is a good example that how we try to plan on our subsurface investigations works. Okay, after the planning, after the implementations of the subsurface works, so now the SI result has come back. Okay, from here, this is the standard and common, the ball logs, the ball log on the information. The engineer shall have the ability in interpret the SI result accordingly. In this case, the candidate, the engineer need to have the ability to understand, to read on the boreholes result correctly. Apart from that, once the laboratory lab result is received, the engineer can further based on the boreholes, CPT's result, and those the laboratory lab result in carry on the subsequent, the detailed design works. Okay, next, I wish to touch on the earthworks. For the earthworks, the engineer shall know how to determine the right material for the backfilling works to form the fill embankments. As always, the engineer should know the definition, classifications of the unsuitable material. What is so-called the USM, unsuitable material? Then, what is the compaction requirements for your projects to your design intention for your requirements? The quality control during the backfilling on site, which you will have to carry out the trial compactions. The purpose of the trial compaction is to test out the plant, the machinery, and the materials that for your backfilling works in building up your backfills embankment, your fills embankment. From there on the trials compactions, you'll be able to test out your machinery and plants. And then for the backfills material, the thickness of the loose layer for the compactions. In normal circumstances, as you can read across a lot of the thickness, it will just specify 150. But in today's the technology with the good machinery, all these things, with the trial compactions, in some cases, we'll be able to have the thicker loose, the thickness on the loose layer for the compaction. Says we may go to the 200 or 250 for each layer for the compactions. Okay, these were essentially to expedite on your earthwork program, but at the same time, you do not sacrifice on your requirements for the compactions requirements. And off comment on the compaction test, it will be carried out. For the compaction test, it will either this one, the FDD on site with the sand replacement, or this one, the nuclear gauge, the density gauge, and all these things, it can be carried out on site in determine the compactions degree, the degree of compactions. And for compactions wise, it's definitely on the earthwork, no tipping is allowed. Okay, so on this one, the normal earthwork will start from the sourcing of the earth material. And all the samples, it has to be taken for the test. The sample test will take to the lab and confirm the suitability of your backfill material. At the lab there will be the series of the tests to be carried out. So for those tests will include, says, you want to test on the plastic limit, you want to test on the liquid limit, the moisture content test, and the sealing test. Apart from that, another the criteria that we will test on the material will be the California's bearing ratio, the CBR. So this CBR is to be carried out in order to check whether the bearings requirements will fit and meet your design intention or to the project's requirements. The 5 points MDD, maximum dry densities, versus the OMC, your moisture content, will be plotted. This is to determine further on the maximum dry densities for your materials. Okay, here we can see for the during the implementation of the earthwork, okay, we will have the erosion and sediments control plan. This I have another separate slide which I will further to explain a little bit more. And what are the other measures to be implemented concurrently? Upon the completions of the earthworks to the requirement platform levels, we will have to turf the slope in soonest possible time. This is to protect your slopes. Okay, for the completed fields embankment, for example, for the photos that we shown over here. Apart from that, I wish to highlight to the engineers that on the earthworks that we shall have some of the others knowledge for the design of the earthwork for the hillside. So this will include the selection of the subsoil, the type 1, the rock parameters analysis for the design stability for the cut and fill, settlement analysis. So for example, to go for the analysis on the immediate settlements, consolidation settlement, secondary completion for fill, the slope stabilization system, the ESCP, and the earthwork, the earth retaining structures. So this is all well covered under the scope for the earthworks. Okay, here this is just the superimpose of the soils parameter together with the proposed platforms that to go for the analysis. Okay, so this is trying to check the stability for the typical embankment field, and then that indicate we have some to identify. If you see the shed areas will be those the USM, and we try to excavate before we building up with a suitable material for the embankment field. Okay, another portions on here is the slope stability check that need to be carried out in accordance to the project specific the factor of safety. So you will have to check on this long-term FOS and the short-term FOS. What are the considerations that you have to in considering to capture in your design? The layer of the existing ground that is obtained while your previous the subsurface investigations work to model in your geotechnical analysis software. Okay, the engineer shall know the parameter for the slope stability checks and to ensure the sufficient the factor safety is achieved in the design. If cannot achieve in the design, we have to think of the way to maybe provide the ground treatments and the counterbalance and all these things in order to give the slope stability with the sufficient factor of safety over here. Okay, so we will go quick for this ESCP. On the ESCP, Erosion Sediment Control Plan, the element consists including the sizing of your sediment basin, and then based on the project earthwork, the areas and your schedules. Okay, the provisions of the sediment fence along the project, the right of way, your ROW or within your work zone. Okay, the constructions of the temporary earth drain and the check dam to carry all the drainage waters, the rainwater during the course of the earthworks. The constructions of the temporary earth drain, check dam, provisions of the wash shaft, heavy-duty interlocking pebble block at the entrance of the site, and not limited to that, to the concern and control the dust, will have the routine water browser is required in order to reduce the dust at site as well. All right, that we go through for the ESCP. Okay, for the earthwork design on the embankment of soft ground, as we can see over here on the soft ground, the analysis and the embankment stability need to be carried out using the subsoil parameters such as shear strength, stiffness, and consolidations parameters. For sediment analysis, will include the immediate sediments, consolidation sediment, and secondary compressions. There are the various types of the ground treatment can be considered depending on the specific site locations, means your project's locations, through the subsurface work that you've gotten all your subsurface informations on your ground, the availability of the ground treatment material, and the depth of the subsoil in relevance. Okay, here we can see this is all captured. Then we have the knowledge on the ground treatments, that how to choose the right type of the ground treatment in his design. Okay, commonly in Malaysia here, we can see this is the 6 types of the very common on the ground treatment that is implemented in Malaysia. Okay, so if you can see from the first will be the replace and remove. Relatively normally will go for the shallow depth of the soft soils. Okay, then we will have the prefabricated vertical drains, PVD, as a ground treatment. We also have the stone columns or sand column for certain works for the ground improvement. And we have the dynamic compactions, jet grouting, and last will be the pile embankments. Okay, next we will have a look on the structures design. On the structure design, on the syllabus for this, the engineer shall have the knowledge in the load application in accordance to UPPL, the wind load abductions in accordance to the MS 1553. For a structural engineer, he shall have the basic knowledge for the structures framing, the subframes analysis, moment distribution analysis, and etc. And not limited to that, the absorptions of the lateral earth soil pressure to the certain specific conditions of the soil intact with the structures, say for the earth retaining structures, he has to know the procedures and what are the items that to be checked for his structures. For instance, for the soil structures interactions elements like the retaining wall, it has to be checked for the stability, to check for the sliding, deflections, and etc. And not to limit it just only design for your bending moment rebar, for your shear capacity on the shear link and all these things. There are other criteria and elements that you have to check at the same time. The fundamental mechanics and static knowledge for the structural analysis is a must in these structures disciplines. Most of the times, the structural engineer is assisted by the structural software in office, like the product structures, your Step Pro, your Tekla, Midas Civil, Lusas, SEF, and many more others. However, in these circumstances for PCE, I will really to recommend the candidate, you really have to back to the basic. You have to pick up your manual calculation. As you notice and you must understand, you won't be provide any computers and software during your PCE. What you have during your PCE is your calculator only. Only your calculator be with you. So do take note on that and back to the basic. Start and try on your manual calculations. Okay, the next will be the candidate will need to have the concept wise on the design for the reinforced concrete design. Here we will have the short form for it that we call for RCC. The PCE will test on the concept and feasibility, preliminary sizing, framing, and load transfer mechanism of the structure from your top superstructures to the bottom of your substructures. Here, the PE shall have the good basic understanding on those important parameters. Okay, let's say that you need to have the knowledge on the span depth ratio, the minimum reinforcement, minimum numbers of rebar in the square column, in the circular column, on all these very basic things that you can refer back to any of your design codes. Okay, the design concept for the solid slab and flat slab. What are those in extra considerations and differences between the structures element? And why in such a way that you choose for your structures framing for the reason why? So on the PCE, it will test you more on your concept that is a quick that you can pick up, okay, and not they won't give you a too complex the question on that. It will be more on concept and simple questions, okay. And then for the RCC structures, the element shall be captured is include and not limited to the beams design, columns design, slabs design, wall design, staircase design, and corbel design. Another area that the PE shall prepare is the precast concrete. I will still remember during the year I'm sitting for the PCE at year 2019, there was a suggestive question is asked on the precast concrete. And the candidate will need to know, to check on the and understand the differences between the RCC design and the precast concrete design. What are those in extra conditions that met to the precast concrete and the detailing of the precast concrete? And of course, it will ask in the conceptual wise. Okay, it won't take you to too complex questions to answer. Okay, we are still with the structural design. In this design, we are talking about the prestressed concrete. Engineers shall have at least an idea of the prestressing and what are those is so-called the prestressing on the prestressed concrete on the conceptual wise. So if you can see the chart at the left-hand side, is shown a typical Magna diagram. If you are yet to know what is the Magna diagram, don't worry. So after these sessions, so you can try to search on it, on what is the Magna diagram. Basically, from the Magna diagram, we can roughly to check on the permissible prestressing for the beam to the effectiveness of the top and bottom modulus that you recommend in your design. So you have a quick check on the sizings and the member and prestressing force that you can be designed for within the sessions and to the routes that you are designed for. In the other hand, engineers shall be able to name the pros and cons between the RCC and the prestressed design. You need to be able to differentiate what are those in consideration that to design in the RCC and what are the consideration is taken into the consideration during the design for prestressed concrete. Apart from that, as we know that the pre-tension and the post-tension operation is totally two different things. Okay, so for here that the candidate shall have at least some the ideas, concept in comparison between the pre-tensions operations construction and post-tensions operations constructions. Definitely in consideration in the pre-tension design and post-tension design, in relevant, there are some the indifference in between that the candidate will need to have to know and understand on that. Apart from that, in the pre-stressing design, another the major factor which will impact to your analysis is the losses considerations. For this, the losses in the pre-stressed design will include the effects due to the creep, due to the shrinkage, due to the steel relaxations of your strengths, the wedge drawn in, and the others losses that you have to take into consideration. Okay, lastly, the candidate will have to know the basic classification. What is so-called the pre-stressing class 1, the pre-stressing class 2, and the pre-stressing class 2, the design. What are the difference to the category of the class 1, class 2, and class 3 design in your pre-stress? Okay, next, we are still within the structural design. In the structural design, let's look at the water retaining structures. For the water retaining structures, the candidate shall prepare himself. For those, the effect is due to the hydrostatic force to the RC design. Okay, the others extra consideration in the watertight structures will be the control of the crack width. So to some engineers that familiar, may not that familiar about the crack width control and crack width design. So here I recommend you to really to have a look on the crack width design. Another things on the watertight structures is the material that we use. For example, like the concrete structure that we use for the watertight structure, we can consider to put in some the pulverized fly ash, the PFA, into your concrete mix. So this will be in the material selection that you can opt for during the watertight design that you define your own material. Okay, another portion on the watertight structures will be the selections of the waterproofing material and the needs of the locations of your construction joints, okay, and the other contraction joint, for example, so that you try to minimize the areas, the weak points that will create the leaking to your watertight structures. Apart from that, a proper construction methodology and the joint detailing, it has to be specified in tandem. Okay, this is very relevant to the watertight water retaining structures design. Okay, not limited to those that RCC, prestressed concrete. Not to forget, in the structural design, we still have to capture for the structural steel. Okay, the engineer shall have the knowledge in the selections, the design for the sections design. To your universal beam, your UB, your universal column, your UC, your hollow sections B, the CHS, the hollow sections, all types, the angles, the plates, the design. The analytical analysis on the steel truss and the design, that it has to be studied as well. Another important design element in the structural steel will be the connections. The connections detailing, as you can see from here. For your welding design, for your bolting design, all these things you must have the certain knowledge on that. This is as well as some the structural steel on your framing, your transfer load mechanism from your slab, from your beams, to your column, to your foundations. In some circumstances, the composite steel design can be adopted. So like this one on the slab that we have the composite design, and I would recommend the candidate to study on this and prepare for it as well. Okay, now we go to the structural. Instead, we are still within the structural syllabus. Another the common chapter will goes to the timber design. Most of the time, for the timber design, will be adopted for the temporary works. For example, like the shoring and formworks design. The candidate can study and prepare for it accordingly. Candidates are having the knowledge, not limited to the just now the timber design. Now we have the others, the elements to be captured under the structural design, which is the knowledge in the statutory requirements that in the UBBL for the building structure, especially on the loadings requirements and the fire resistance requirement. These are those the basics, the knowledge that we need to possess, that we need to have. Okay, the candidate on the PE, I will really strongly recommend you for the structures question that you really have the in-depth knowledge and really familiarize yourself with the UBBL. Okay, with that, Shazwani, can we just have a 3 to 5 minutes break? So I will see that we almost an hour. So can we have a 5 minutes break to the audience for a toilet break?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
All
so
right.
with that, then the now I see now is the 106. So I see that can we come back at the 110?
Yes, okay.
All right, thanks. Hi, Shazwani.
Hi.
I believe now it's about the time. 5 minutes, okay?
Okay, so okay, Stella, you can continue the presentation.
All right, so can we continue? Okay, so there was a quick 5 minutes toilet break. Okay, let's continue for the next. Okay, we are still in the paper B for the civil technical paper. Okay, so here the subject that I want to further highlight is on the foundations design. Okay, in this the foundations design from start really recommends the engineer you should know your ground. The ground's condition is very relevant to all kinds of your structural works. So having the knowledge in the subsurface investigations work is essential, and you need to understand those the grounds parameter. Okay, the SI, all the related the informations that you obtain from your SI works. Okay, now we will have the further on the foundations design. In these structural chapters for the foundations design, engineers shall have the knowledge on the pad footing, the straight footing, the rough foundations design, the pile cap design. On this one, for the pile cap, the candidate should have the knowledge to choose either for your structural wise that you will go for bending flexural theory or the truss analogy theory. Okay, you need to be able to differentiate what are indifference and which you go for the bending flexural design and why you go for truss analogy analysis for your pile cap. The sizing of the pile cap, and then this one, the checking, you need to know that the differences between the bending theory and the truss analogy theory, the detailing wise for both is very much different. So that's why you have to have the study on this. In the pile group design, the engineer will need to understand the sizing for the pile group based on the load transfer from your column or from your stumps. The pile cap have to check for the sectional shear as well as the punching shear check. In the other hand, the engineer shall having the knowledge on the different type of the pile. So for the different type of pile, this will include for those the RC square piles, your concrete bore piles, your steel pipe piles, the micro pile links, the H pile, span piles, timber pile, or more commonly we will call it as pucker pile. So all these elements, this pile design is making relevant. This is more towards the structural design of the different types of the pile deck in consideration on structural. It's not just to the geotechnical design for your geotechnical capacity that to check on your pile length, but on here under the chapter for structures, you have in relevance knowledge that be able to design for this kind of the piles. So in relevance to that, the difference and what are the design procedure and what to consider one of another. Apart from that, another element that to take note is the earth retaining wall, the earth retaining structure and basement wall. The engineer to familiar himself for the gravity wall, the RC cantilever wall design. The correct K values, says your K equals 0.6, 0.5 or 0.33, what are your consideration? And what this K value is coming from then from your subsurface investigations work from your parameter that in consideration. Okay, the respective design consideration in the lateral soil pressure adoptions in the design. The last item on the foundations design will be the ship pile design. On the ship pile design, this will cover for the those you familiar with the FS3AP, all these ship piles design, and the basement construction say that you go for the diaphragm wall and so on. Okay, that will conclude for our structure syllabus. Okay, next, we'll go to the this civil infrastructures design. On the civil infrastructures design, we have the chapter that to cover for the water supplies design to span guidelines, your sewerage design, the road design, and drainage design for housing building developments. Okay, first, we go for the water supplies design. The major guidelines to follow will be the span guidelines. An engineer, you should familiar with the requirement in these guidelines. Candidate will have to have this knowledge that you'll be able to count, to estimate the daily water demand, the estimation based on the SPAN guideline to your developments. The next will be the water reticulation system. And the engineer that you shall know how in checking for your average flow, your fire flow, and hydrant flow. And all these make very relevant that you need to fully understand and follow the SPAN guidelines, especially on your daily water demands estimation. And then the next on your source of water supply tapping point, you will cover in the next slides. Okay, so the first part is on the design part, not limited to the design for the water supply. The engineer that on the water design on this part on the water supply, the engineer shall familiar with the submissions to the water authority based on the SPAN requirements. Okay, as you can see from here, that we having the all these the hydraulics calculation that the engineer that you will try to check on your water rate, and all this is based on your BWL, your HSL, and all these things to maintain a certain pressure head in your hydraulics design for your water supply. So here is the second part on the submission. So more relevance to that is your jadual ketiga, your third schedule. Third schedule is on the applications for the source that you request the source from the water authority in the respective state. Because we have the different states, you have the different water authority. Okay, the fourth schedule will be the applications approval plans. So in normal, we will submit our external water rate for approval. Sixth schedules will be the tests and inspections of the external reticulation system. Ninth schedule, jadual ke-9, application for the handing over, and the jadual ke-10, schedule 10, acceptance and handing over of the external water rec systems and the supplies of the mans. Okay, so that we will cover for the water. Okay, another elements in the civil infrastructures, the designs will be the sewerage design. For sewerage design, the sewer design, engineers are having the knowledge in the Malaysia Sewerage Industry Guideline, MSIG. So in this MSIG guide, not limited to that, it will have the total in 4 volumes. So 1 to 4. In tandem, there is another MS that you need to familiarize during your sewer design, which is MS 1228. The design of the sewerage will cover the flow estimations, the alignments control, your sewer pipelines alignments, the location, the spacing of your manholes, sewerage manhole, for your pipe velocities, the minimum, the gradients that to apply, and so on. Engineers shall have to know how to calculate your population's equivalence on your PE's calculations based on the MSIG. And then from your developments, what kind of the development, there is the guidelines in the SPANs, and then in the MSIG that you have to follow in your estimation of PE. For your info, again, in the year 2019, the first question is a sewer infra questions, which the candidate is required to review the sewer pipelines alignments given. And you have to give some calculations that your comments on the gradients, the alignment, and all these things in order for you to answer this technical subjective question. Okay, next, we shall cover for the routes design. In the routes or equivalence of those highways design, the major design reference will be the ATJ, Arahan Teknik Jalan. So this one on the geometry wise, we will have the major reference that we follow, which is the ATJ 8/86 and the RIM guideline 2, RIM GL2 for the geometric design. The engineer shall have the knowledge in relevance to the super elevations, the SE. How do we control the SE and why do we need the SE? The general control of the vertical and the horizontal alignment, your vertical grade and your horizontal planes, the plan curve and all these things that you need to have the relevant knowledge to it. the junctions design, that including your AC/DC, your acceleration length, the consideration, the length, your deceleration length, how you control and how you design for your AC/DC. And then not limited to that, as well as to cover on your merging length, your diverging length, and etc. Okay, another daily works for the root engineer will be keeping a balanced cut and fill in his design. And hence the engineer shall having the knowledge on this in order for them in obtaining the most optimization design in his alignment selections. So for normal, you may have your alignment selections for the alignment option A, B, C, D, and so on. So is the responsible and the duty for the alignment engineer, the root engineer, to select the most cost benefit, what is so called on all these the optimizations throughout his alignment options. Apart from that, the root pavement design is another chapter that to cover under the root. Okay, for the root pavement design, it can refer to the ATJ 5/85. And normally when in reading and we produce the calculation for the pavement design, you will need certain like the traffic report on the traffic estimation in order for us to give a better and good pavement designs. Okay, the next will be the drainage. In the drainage design, the engineer shall familiar himself with the MASMA. What is MASMA? MASMA is the Manual Baru Saliran Mester Aram from the JPS. The requirements and the procedure, the HP, the hydraulic procedure of the drainage design, that the drainage engineer, that you really seriously, you have to familiarize yourself with it. He needs to prepare the hydraulic design, the calculation based on the catchment, your ARI, to consider the contour of your developments, the platform of your developments, or even the past historical flooding events, the level, all these things in consideration for your design. In the MASMA design, the MASMA 2, there is a further requirement on the on-site detentions requirement, whereby the engineer, you need to have the certain on the this knowledge to read on your, especially the sizing of your on-site OSD. Okay, I do remember again in the year 2019 in the suggested question, second questions. So we are given by a giant development plans. So as you can see, it's roughly to similar size like this, that the candidate is need to study on the contour topo, is given the type of the developments, and then in that the topo map itself is come with a ponds. The candidate is required to answer on the water supply estimation, on your server PE estimations, your drainage design, and at the end of the day, to make a consideration, do you have any in additions for your optimizations design that to make use of the existing pond as well? So this kind of the question is expected in the suggested question for the technical paper B. Okay, the last portions on the technical paper, okay, will be the syllabus on the regulatory practice and the submissions procedure. So this is the daily work of a civil engineer that we do the authority submission. So every day today we are doing the authority submissions. Okay, I will recommend for the submitting person, the SP for the civil works or the building works, okay, to really know the procedure wise on your plan submissions, your structural plan submission, your infra plan submissions, then in accordance to the UPPL, to your earthwork bylaw, to your street and drainage building aid, and so on. Okay, you need to really know the procedure starting from your plan submission, the approval process, engagement with the authority, and lastly, after the construction, issuance of your CCC. In some circumstances, the civil engineer can submit the passive bomber submission. That is why that you need to have some the knowledge in relevant in this area as well. For those EMS qualified company, the measure and consideration to take into their design and construction will refer to those environmental quality aid. And the engineer shall having the knowledge on this aid as well, and how to dealing with those scheduled waste discharge and in control to mitigate on the air quality issues. All right. So with that, we have completely to cover for the syllabus on the technical paper for civil engineer. Okay. Again, I would like to bring you to the summary, the weightage for the PCE question on part B. As you can see from here, there are again the 4 categories ranging for the geotechnical. The questions will have the 20% weightage. Infrastructural will having the 30% by weightage. Structural question by 40% by weightage. The last will be regulations, submissions, and contract emissions with tax 10% by weightage. Summing up, we will have a full 100% for the distribution in 4 categories. Okay, again, this is the sample question grade from the BM, and candidate can have a look. From the above questions, we can understand that the question actually is back to the basic, back to the very fundamental knowledge, and it just in certain time to need some the very minimal of calculations. So they won't be too complex and too complicated calculations question for the candidate to digest during the time for when you answer for the objective. Okay, as again, if I can recall and remind you on my earliest remarks, each question on the objective is normally what need to have to take is less than 1.75 minutes. Okay, in my earlier remarks, excuse me. Okay, the next will be the subjective question. Again, for the subjective question, it always will be asked on the condition, the situation, like the questions. So meaning to say, you were given by problems, a situation, and there is some the details is lined out for you and stated for you, and you have to you are required to resolve those problems with a technical answer. And your answer will normally be the this one, all these questions. It's just like our daily works on those the constraints that the problem that you face day to day. So, and of course, with the much exposure and good exposure on all range of the civil engineering works, the PE will have the ability to answer. And to your knowledge, I believe all these questions, right, is based on the live example, the real cases from this question maker, and making the question for the PCE. Okay, so next, I would like to share. So we have go through so much, we spend so much time on the syllabus to go through the part A for commons paper, and we spend so much time to go through the part B for the technicals paper. Okay, let's look at the preparations. So how do we prepare ourselves to sit for the PCE? And hereby, I would like to share some of my personal experience, okay, to share with the audience today. Okay, for those who are the first timer, okay, I wish to tell you that the PCE will normally carry out at the exam hall at universities of Malaya. So as you can see from this, the photo, actually I just grabbed from the BM website. Okay, as you can see that every candidate were given with 2 tables. Okay, this is the open books. You can bring all the books you have. Okay, then you can place at your tables, your chair, anywhere. And so-called incidentally, okay, you can see this is me. So I was captured in this photo. Okay, this is the photo taken for the year 2019 PCE at UM Exam Hall. So this will give a little bit idea, especially for those first timer, because anyhow, it has been so many years. We never take like the very formal what they call the formal exam like this ever since after our university time. So this at least to give you some impression and how the exam hall will look like. So if you enter the exam hall that time, you won't feel too panic. So it will just like your uni time, you're sitting for the exam. So you just sit down there and answer the questions. Okay, here to fully prepare for PCE, there are some points I wish to highlight and recommend to the candidates. Okay, In this PCE, in order to sit for it, I will recommend the candidate to have the full exposure for the all stages of the engineering works, meaning to say that the all stages is referred to ever since the feasibility studies of your project, that you carry out the feasibility design, your prelim design, then after that, you go to your detailed design. So in the cycle of each project, our role is not limited to the design stage. We still have the authority submission stage. We'll still go through the tender stage, the contract stage, the construction stage, the project management, how you manage your project. So this including for those post-construction that will have to get involved in the DLP, the defect liability period, then how you issue on your CMGD, the certificate of making good, and then eventually after all has been completed, how you get to compile and get sure of your G1 to G21 forms, your F forms, and the issuance of the CCC. So that is not the end yet. You still have to settle with your project final account. That is why I say for the candidate, it is good and better for you to have the exposure to the all stages of the engineering works as much as possible. Apart from that, most of the times we could possibly to be trained the engineer at particular areas without our realize. Frankly speaking, when I'm picking up the civil engineers, I started with the structural designs. So most of the times I've been so keen and just limited to the structural knowledge. But having that, it's seeming like I'm putting the knowledge barriers. Okay, so here I would recommend to the candidates, try to prevent putting up the knowledge barrier and try to expand your skill and new knowledge across all the wide spectrums of the civil engineering. Okay, this is to say that you don't limit yourself, and you as an engineer, as a structures engineer, or as a drainage engineer, infra engineer, geotechnical engineer, but rather in calling yourself as a versatile civil engineers. Whenever possible, I recommend that the candidate to pick up some of the managerial tasks, because there will be some levels of the question in the paper A, the commons paper, and this payment, the part B paper, that you will need to at least to have the post like the team's leader, the project manager, and with that position, that only you'll be provided the opportunity to expose yourself for the opportunity to have some the contract knowledge for a project admin and to the construction stage admin as well. So this is to gain more managerial skills to you yourself. The candidate shall be sensitive to the current and up-to-date authority requirements as well. So in this case, like previously, I already mentioned the two relevant items that is now ongoing, which is the COVID-19, that to consider as in your contract knowledge about whether or not to make it as a force majeure clause. And the currently, which another, the hot topic here is on the revised scale of fees. I believe there is another, the item now is as well as a hot topic is the capitalizations for the ECP. So I will fully recommend that the PE to stay close. And then for the current developments of the authority requirements and those of construction industry developments and requirements. Okay, apart from that, I recommend the engineer to always to have the discussions with your senior for the problem, your daily problem that you face. Okay, in actual fact, to listen for more what we call the suggestions or recommendations from them. Okay, to seek the guidance from them. I will pretty sure that you will get benefited from their experience sharing to you. And nowadays, I believe all the audience here, we are operating and we are doing our design or our daily works is fully computerized. We play and we're working with computer, and we have reduced much on the handwriting. So if you can see from the left-hand side, this is just a sample for you. So you need to be careful on your handwriting, because it is always you have the three long questions in each the part for the part A and part B. And you need to have a good handwriting. It's essential for your examiner to understand your sentence, your words, your answer. So you need to try to prevent for the lousy handwriting. That at the end of the day, that you try to catch time and you just really do very scribble all the way. I believe your examiner will not be able to understand what you have write on your answer sheet. So be careful on that. Okay, I recommend the candidate to have the self-pilot exam. This is to ensure that you time accordingly for your durations, taking on your question answer, during your answering for your sessions. So like the remarks I maxed to you, you will take about 25 minutes in your handwriting for the long essay for each question. Okay, another things that I want to remind the candidate is you need to always to bring the proper bind books and don't bring those loose copy or notes and hand out. Okay, as I see it in front of my eyes. Okay, during we need to pass the checkpoint that all the the staff, they will check your books. For those the loose copy and those the handwriting copy, they will snap from you. So you are not allowed to bring in all those the loose copy of the what you call for all the paper that to bring it in the exam hall. So do remember on that, even though it's an open book, but make sure that you bring the correct books and the bind books. Okay. Apart from that, I will again to recommend to candidate that you need to answer straight to the question. Don't beat about the bush, and then you try to not to really to copy paste from the books, because as we see is open book, most likely and most of the times the candidate will just flip and direct copy and paste. Okay, I will just to highlight to you, you might just probably you don't have enough time to copy. Okay, so the thing is just answer the question straight. Okay, the point form is definitely allowed. Okay, okay. Here I want to have some the further some tips for the candidates. Okay, this is the as we can see as early we're already having knowledge that on the weightage for the 4 category of the possible question in the PCE. For paper 1 on the objective ABCDE questions, okay, you need to prepare the syllabus as much as possible, because in this objective question, that is an answer available for you to choose from. So normally this won't be a very big, very difficult the part on the paper 1. Okay, but paper 2, you need to pay more attention to the REA, RER, and contract laws, especially for the during you facing for the contract frustrations. Okay, just to recap, so this is some I still can get from my memories that the 5 questions. So what are those type of questions asked in year 2019? For the part A common paper year 2019, I still can remember the question 1 is asked on the role of the SP and PSP on the site supervision when the alternative design is adopted for that constructions. Okay, what are the statutory requirements on the owners, the PSP? Because the situation given is after the alternative design is accepted, there is a value to the property products, the property design by that, the second PE. So what are those things that you have to very define correctly and clearly in accordance to your UBBL allowance? The question 2 is asking about the REA. Question 3 asking about the professional conduct and RER. The question 4 is asking the stages of the project. So which I already show you since the preliminary stage, then until the last, the post-construction stage. So you're also asking on your PII. The PI refers to the professional indemnity insurance and contract laws. I apologize for that. Due to my poor memory, I cannot remember what is the question 5 anymore. Okay, in this, the quick tips for the candidate. Say, in this paper 2, part A, you fully prepare yourself on the REA, RER, common law and local aid. Okay, says you pick one of the questions that in relevance to those that you can score 65 marks. Okay, remember for each questions, the long essay will be 100 marks. Out of the 100 marks, if you be able to get at least 65 marks that you're confident to answer on those, and then you can choose another question. Even if you score at the lower mark, 25 marks out of 100, you still can get in total that the 65 plus 65 plus 25 over 300 marks, you still can get 51.7 marks. In such a way that you are definitely in the passing the threshold value of 50% that you can pass in the part B of paper 2. Okay, similarly, if you go for the part B for Syllabus paper, again for paper 1 is the objective question that the candidate across the 4 subjects, the 4 categories here, please fully prepare for it. This is also with the objective that you have the answer to choose from. So normally it won't be made too difficult. But the difficult part will come to the paper 2. Of normal, there will be the 2 infra question asked and 2 structures question asked and 1 geotechnical question is asked. Okay, so again, from my memory for the Syllabus paper year 2019 paper 2, so like I mentioned early in my slide, question 1 is on the sewage design question. Question 2 is on the infrastructure development planning on the water demand estimations, your P estimation on servo, and the drainage design. The question 3 is a structure question that you are asked to provide the structures framing and to do a quick member sizing and provide why you consider, what are the factors that you consider for those the member sizing. This is to split into the 2 parts. The first part is the structures framing, member sizing, and part 2 is the prestressed design. And the question 4 is the RCC design, the reinforced concrete design. Again, it also got 2 parts. The first part is quite straightforward on the those are simply supported design and so on. That shouldn't have much problem for the structures engineer. And then second part will be on the precast design. Okay, and the question 5 is a geotechnical design that you are requested to check on the slope stability and the factor of safety and to propose the geotechnical improvement works. Okay, says today, if you are a structures engineer and you are aiming to score high for the 2 structures question, that at 65 marks each. And the balance, the third question, you just get from one, either the infra question or from the geotechnical question. Even if you score very low at 25 marks, that you're having 65 plus 65 plus 25 over 300 full marks, you still can get the 51.7% that in passing for the threshold values, the passing mark for 50%. So this is some of the quick tips that I can recommend to the candidates. Okay, frankly speaking, throughout the whole process in the preparations, and I have set for this exam, for myself, as acquire the new skill set and the knowledge that I just not limited to the knowledge that I have before this, but it's the enhancement for myself for many areas throughout the wide spectrums of the civil engineering. So since there is a syllabus is posted, at least it's just like a checklist for me that I will go through the syllabus, then I will put all my knowledge check. So this one check, this one check. So to go through one by one in order to check and cover for those, the shortcoming in myself. Okay, no matter this is in the technical knowledge, the project management knowledge for the ECP and the managerial group and many more. The most important part for the PPC, remember that it's not limited to what I know, but what I ought to know. Okay, in the other hand, I also have more exposure to the regulation, the rules of the engineering practice, and understand more for the PSP and SP responsibility and the responsible and liability. Okay, with that, I would like to come to the closing. So I wish a good luck for those civil candidate who's sitting the PCE for this year. Do remember that this PCE, it may be difficult, but it's not impossible. Good luck to you all and thank you. Okay, with that, I would like to hand over the sections back to the moderator, Shazwani. Shazwani?
Yes.
Aha.
Since we have a question on the chat board, maybe Mr. Alex can answer a few questions from the participant.
Okay, just a minute. Let me to have a look on the text box. Okay, so I believe I just roll from the top to bottom. Okay, so first one is from the John. Okay, John is asking about the PCE number of the passing candidate statistics. Actually, all these statistics is I capture from the past the roadshow from the BM. So those are the sum on the statistic that I have obtained during the roadshow. So today I take the opportunity to post it here to make known to the sittings PE. Okay. Second, so I will see that is to the Sui Hans. Sui Han is say that must all PE obtain the erosion control sediments plan cert. I believe you refer to the CPAS. So to me, CPAS is not compulsory for all the PE, but rather is another endorsements on the erosion sediments control plans that on the CPAS that you have to sit for the exam. Once you pass, that you will get for this CPAS. So for some the authority, they will require this the ESCP to be endorsed by the CPAS engineer. So and hence there will be the some engineer is obtaining the CPAS. All right. So the next questions I will see from Go. Okay, the Go say that the SAPA candidate have a very little or to no exposure to the PD structures. So it's often used in Sabah. Even all the pre-stressing the guys is from the KL and left just one PD company from KL in KK now. Okay, for this, right, I would like to say that actually it does not matter whether what you call, of course, to the exposure to the daily works, they could be the very minimal, I mean, or simple like you say that no exposure to the candidate at Sabah. But this does not to say that we cannot having acquired those the pre-stress, the knowledge. Okay, so I would suggest the goal we just have to what you call to exchange idea. Even you can have some friends at the peninsula here that is practicing as a PE, that exchange of the opinions and exchange of the information that to widen your skill and your knowledge to the PT. Okay, so this is what I can recommend to go. Okay, next I will see from the Sui Han. Okay, I believe that why we need to get those exposure in the lacking to ensure the full competency in the field works. Yes, I totally agree with you, Wong. Okay, then the I'll see I pick the questions. The next, the engineer in public civil service were facing a lacking of technical parts. As you might as well know that the engineer in public civil service are not exposed too much. How would you recommend the engineer in public civil service to be able to see and acquire sufficient appropriate knowledge? So I aware that actually in some I will see that the INA is referred for those the government servants. So for some the government technical department, they do have their policies program. So I would suggest the candidate to really to participate for those the policies program that in the some the circumstances that in the government works, they do send their engineers that is coming to the consulting engineer office in gaining the technical part for the technology exchange. So I will recommend that for those government servants, there will be the way that in order what you call in participate for those programs that you'll be able to widen on your technical skill on that and not limited to just for the managerial levels of knowledge. So that is my recommendations to them. Okay, another one I think from Suihan also. Can peer exchange be good to ensure that the competence is sufficient? So like early I did touch. So on the exchange of idea discussion with your senior. So particularly, I would suggest you to really to exchange idea for those your senior who is already a PPC. So they should have a vast experience that it can what it call to giving the knowledge in relevance to share their experiences. Maybe they already throughout in this industry for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. Definitely their valuable experience will be able to share to you will be good. Okay, and not limited to that. Like again, I will recommend to the candidate. Okay, if you know who and so on, your friends, your peers, engineers who is tier 1 is preparing to sitting for the tier 2 for the PPC for this PCE, having a study group together that you exchange idea, exchange information for those the topic that what you call that you can exchange that you'll be able to up to that, then sharing, then sitting for the PCE together. Okay, I think from the Saifuriza to request for the slide presentations, I think from the moderator after these sections, will the presentation slide be distributed to all the participants?
Yes, we will email the slide presentation to all participants.
Okay, thanks for the clarifications.
Okay.
So another one from the bank chart. Okay, so he's saying that the teaching candidate how to marginally pass the PCE is not proper. So in his opinions, all civil candidates must know the structure, infra, geotech within the scope of their work. There is no much as marginally passing with public health and safety. He is definitely right. So just now, you will see that actually what I refer to, I always emphasize that you as a civil engineer to be versatile as possible, that you need to capture all the possible knowledge and the syllabus that we have gone through for the past 2 hours. So here, just now is not to say asking you to just for marginally pass. That one is putting a situation. Okay, try to do well in some the question, and it's not to just let go another. It's just a sample example for you. If you really cannot score for that particular questions, and how you be able to pass it. Okay, nonetheless, on the all the technical, the wide spectrum or the civil engineering, like I say, it will be just not enough for me to stress on one of every others. On this one, on the civil engineers, for us, it's a lifelong learning. All the technical skill knowledge, it has to be acquired from day to day, and it's a long distance for it. Okay, I see now is the last will be to share how many attempts have you experienced sitting the PCE exam. It will be great to know, as we heard many said for couple attempts before making it through, whereas the vast majority does not, despite receipts. Okay, for the information to John, I am the fortunate one. I only take once in the PCE. That is the year 2019. I did it once and I passed it at year 2019. So I do have friends that already tried for a few attempts and he's still keen, okay, in sitting for PCE. All right, I think Shazwani, I don't see any the new question popping up. Oh, how much is the cost for PEPC? The cost to become a PEPC is priceless. Okay, but there will be some the subscription fee and the application fee that you need to what you call to check in the BM website. So if not mistaken, there will be the admin fee of 100 ringgit. Okay, and then to sit for it, the fee is at 1,000. Is it increased on a yearly basis? I don't think so. So from the past 2016 until the year 2019, the price for the subscription applications to sit for the PCE is standard, is fixed without change. All right, if there is no much question popping up, so I will see that we are just nice control for I think a few minutes before 2. All right, Shazwani, can I hand over back the sessions to you?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Engineer Chung Hong Wei, for answering all questions for the participant. So we have come to the end part of our presentation. Thank you again, Engineer Chung Hong Wei, for a great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us today. And thank you everyone for active participation for today's session. We hope you learn and enjoy from today's presentation. For a soft reminder, once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a thank you email attached with the webinar feedback form. We will appreciate if you complete that and provide your feedback. We hope to see you again on the next webinar session. Stay safe, everyone. Take care and Assalamualaikum.
Thank you and good luck all.